The morning sun rose over New Terra like it had for the past 40 years. Sarah Chen stood in her wheat field, watching the golden stalks bend in the gentle breeze. She smiled, thinking about her daughter's birthday tomorrow. Life was good here, far from Earth's crowded cities. In the colony's central hub, Governor Marcus Webb reviewed the morning reports. 20,000 people called this world home now. 2 generations had been born here. They had built schools, hospitals, and parks. New Terra was more than a colony. It was a home. The warning came without mercy. At 800 hours local time, the sky began to darken, not with clouds, but with ships, hundreds of them, descending through the atmosphere like angry metal birds. The Zirath Collective had arrived, and they had not come to talk. Governor Webb rushed to the communication center. His hands shook as he sent the emergency message to Earth. This is New Terra. We are under attack. Multiple hostile ships, requesting immediate assistance. This is not a drill. Please, someone help us. The first energy beam struck the northern settlement. 3,000 people lived there. In 5 seconds, they were gone. The beam carved through buildings, through parks, through the school where children had been learning about Earth's oceans. Everything turned to ash and melted stone. Sarah Chen saw the flash from her field. She started running toward the town center, toward her daughter's school. She never made it. The second beam vaporized the agricultural district. Sarah Chen, her wheat field, and her dreams of tomorrow's birthday party became nothing but heated air and dust. Governor Webb kept transmitting even as the building shook around him. They're killing us all. No warning, no demands. Just death. Tell Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we died as humans. Tell them the transmission ended. The communication center became a crater. The Zirath ships worked with terrible efficiency. They had done this before to other species who refused to leave their territory. One settlement after another vanished under the bombardment. The ships used energy weapons, kinetic missiles, and atmospheric processors that poisoned the air itself. Commander Zax of the Zirath fleet watched from his flagship. He felt nothing. These humans had been warned repeatedly. They had ignored every message, every threat. The Galactic Council had approved this action. The humans were young, weak, and foolish. They would learn their place in the galaxy. By 1400 hours, New Terra was silent. No more transmissions. No more life signs. The orbital scans showed nothing but ruins and cooling slag where a thriving colony had stood that morning. 20,000 humans had simply ceased to exist. The Zirath fleet remained in orbit for another day, ensuring complete destruction. They burned the forests to prevent any survival. They collapsed the mine shafts. They destroyed every satellite and communication relay. When they left, New Terra was a dead rock with the ghosts of human dreams buried in its ashes. 3 weeks later, the message reached Earth. The Sol system received New Terra's final transmission through the relay network. At first, there was just silence. Then someone played the recording. Governor Webb's voice, desperate and afraid, filled the command center at Earth Defense Headquarters. They're killing us all. No warning, no demands, just death. The recording played in the United Nations Emergency Council. It played in the Parliament of Mars. It played in every government center from Mercury to Neptune. 20,000 voices silenced forever, 20,000 lives erased like they never mattered. Admiral Catherine Okonkwo listened to the transmission in her office on Luna Station. She was a tall woman with gray in her hair and scars on her hands from the corporate wars. She had seen death before. But this was different. This was murder on a scale that demanded response. Earth sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council. They demanded justice. They demanded explanation. They demanded the Zirath be held accountable for genocide. The Council's response came quickly. Too quickly. They had prepared it in advance. The Zirath Collective acted within their territorial rights. The human colony was established in protected space after repeated warnings. This enforcement action, while regrettable, was necessary to maintain galactic order. The Council will not intervene in legitimate territorial disputes. We advise Earth to respect established boundaries in the future. Admiral Okonkwo read the message 3 times. Each time her jaw tightened more. They were calling it a territorial dispute. 20,000 dead humans, and the Council called it regrettable but necessary. She walked to her window and looked out at Earth below. The blue marble that had survived ice ages, asteroid strikes, world wars, and its own self-destructive tendencies. Humanity had clawed its way from caves to the stars. They had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times, but they always survived. They always adapted. The Zirath thought they had taught Earth a lesson. The Council thought humanity would retreat, accept their place as junior members of galactic civilization, and never challenge the established order again. They were all about to learn something about humans that history had taught again and again. You could beat humanity down. You could burn their cities. You could kill their people. But there was a line, and once crossed, something woke up. Something old and angry and utterly relentless. Admiral Okonkwo opened her computer and began typing orders. The message went to every shipyard, every military installation, every hidden facility that humanity had built in its expansion through the solar system. The orders were simple. Full mobilization. Begin protocol Enduring Fury, we will have our accounting. Earth went silent. No more diplomatic messages, no more pleas for justice, just silence. The kind of silence that comes before a storm that will reshape the world. The change began quietly, but it happened everywhere at once. On Mercury, the solar forges that had been building colony ships shifted production. Now they made warships. The intense heat of the closest planet to the sun powered massive foundries that worked without stopping. Metal flowed like water, shaped into hulls designed for one purpose: war. Mars Manufacturing Collective received new contracts. The corporation that had fought Earth in bitter conflicts 20 years ago now worked alongside their old enemy. They built missile systems, point defense grids, and engine cores that could push a ship to incredible speeds. Old grudges meant nothing now. The Zirath had united humanity in a way diplomacy never could. In the asteroid belt, mining stations became weapons factories. Rocks that had been carved up for their iron and platinum now served a different purpose. Tungsten, the heavy metal perfect for kinetic weapons, was extracted and refined. Engineers worked in zero gravity, their welding torches creating constellations of sparks as they built ship after ship. Jupiter's moons hosted the reactor facilities. Enormous fusion plants powered by the gas giant's hydrogen supplied energy to the growing fleet. Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto became industrial centers, their ice providing water and oxygen, while their factories produced the sophisticated electronics that would guide weapons to their targets. Admiral Catherine Okonkwo stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the production reports flow in. Numbers that should have taken years were being achieved in months. Humanity was good at many things, but when threatened, they became something else entirely. They became a factory of war. She thought about her grandmother's stories of the old wars on Earth. World War II, when American factories had turned from making cars to making tanks. Entire industries transformed overnight. The sleeping giant, they had called it then. A peaceful nation pushed too far, responding with industrial might that overwhelmed its enemies. History was repeating itself, but this time on a solar system scale. Her second in command, Commander James Rodriguez, approached with a datapad. Admiral, the Zirath intelligence reports are coming in. They think we have maybe 300 ships. Okonkwo smiled without humor.
How many do we actually have?
As of this morning, 4,237 ships of the line, operational and ready for combat. Another 2,000 in final assembly. Support vessels and automated platforms number over 10,000, and they think we have 300. Their scouts never make it back to report, ma'am. We've been very thorough about that. Okonkwo nodded. Every Zirath probe that entered Sol system was quietly destroyed. No warnings, no traces. They simply vanished. Let the Zirath wonder. Let them think humanity was weak and frightened. She looked at the strategic map. The Zirath Collective controlled 70 star systems, 6 different alien species united under their banner. They had been the dominant power in this sector for 300 years. They had destroyed smaller civilizations before. They thought humanity would be just another conquest, or better yet, a species that would simply retreat and accept their place. But they had made mistakes. Fatal mistakes. First, they had assumed humanity's industrial capacity was similar to other young species. They had never faced a civilization that had been building space infrastructure for 200 years. Earth's solar system wasn't just a home. It was a massive industrial complex that stretched billions of kilometers. Second, they had assumed human weapons would be primitive. They had never encountered a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing its own kind. Human weapons weren't exotic energy systems or gravitic disruptors. They were simple, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. Kinetic weapons accelerated to near light speed. Nuclear-pumped lasers, self-replicating munitions, electronic warfare systems developed from centuries of hacking and cyber conflict. Third, and most important, they had killed 20,000 civilians without warning. They had shown humanity that the galaxy had no justice, no mercy, and no rules that would protect them. In doing so, they had removed the one thing that had kept humanity restrained: hope for peaceful coexistence. Admiral Okonkwo pulled up the personnel files. Every ship captain had been carefully selected. Veterans of the Mars Wars, survivors of the Belt conflicts, tacticians trained in Earth's finest military academies. Each one had lost someone they knew on New Terra. Each one understood what they were fighting for. The main view screen showed the fleet assembled in high orbit. Ships of every size and class, from nimble corvettes to massive dreadnoughts. The largest, the Unbroken, stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern. It was Okonkwo's flagship, named for humanity's spirit. You could hurt them, but you couldn't break them. A communication came through from Earth. The Secretary General's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. The weight of ordering humanity to war showed in her eyes. Admiral, the Council has sent another message. They're demanding we stand down. They say any military action will be met with overwhelming force. They claim the Zirath are mobilizing 500 ships to defend their territory. Okonkwo kept her expression neutral. 500 ships. They think that's overwhelming force. What are your orders, Admiral? Okonkwo looked at the fleet, at the thousands of ships humanity had built, at the weapon systems that would shock the Zirath, at the crews ready to fight for their species' survival. Tell the Council we received their message. Tell them we decline their terms. And tell the Zirath Collective that they wanted to teach us a lesson. Now class is in session and we're teaching them about humanity. She turned to Commander Rodriguez. Begin Operation Steel Rain. All ships are to proceed to the rally point. We advance in 48 hours. Yes, ma'am. What about the Zirath fleet of 500? Admiral Okonkov's smile was cold. 500 ships against our 5,000? I'd say they should have brought more. The orders went out across the fleet. In every ship, from the smallest corvette to the mighty Unbroken, crews prepared for war. Engineers ran final checks on weapon systems. Pilots reviewed attack patterns. Marines loaded onto assault shuttles just in case boarding actions were needed. In the quiet moments before battle, some crew members recorded messages for families back home. Others prayed to whatever gods they believed in. A few simply sat in silence thinking about New Terra and the 20,000 voices that would never speak again. The Sol system had been quiet for a month, absorbing the shock of the massacre. But that silence was ending. Now came the thunder. The Zirath Expeditionary Fleet moved through space with confidence. 500 warships arranged in a combat formation that had won battles for 3 centuries. Commander Zax, the same officer who had overseen New Terra's destruction, commanded from the heavy cruiser Righteous Purpose. He studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Intelligence reported the humans had perhaps 300 ships scattered across their system. The Zirath fleet would crush them, destroy their orbital facilities, and force Earth to accept collective rule. It would be quick and clean. Commander, we're detecting something on long-range sensors, his tactical officer reported. The human fleet? I think so, sir. But the readings are strange. There seem to be more contacts than expected. Zax frowned. Sensor echoes. The humans are probably using some primitive jamming technology, close to visual range and prepared to engage. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet appeared as if materializing from nowhere. Not 300 ships, not 500,000s. The sensors kept counting and the numbers kept rising. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. On the bridge of Righteous Purpose, the crew stared in disbelief. It was impossible. No species built fleets this large. The industrial capacity alone would require centuries of development. Sir, we're counting over 5,000 capital ships, the tactical officer said, his voice shaking, plus support vessels. The numbers are still climbing. Commander Zax felt ice in his stomach. Get me the collective command, now. But there was no time. The human fleet didn't stop to talk. It didn't broadcast warnings or demands for surrender. It simply began to move forward like an iron wave rolling across the void of space. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Unbroken, watching the Zirath fleet realize their mistake. She felt no joy in what was about to happen, only grim necessity. All ships execute attack pattern Delta 7. Target their propulsion systems first. I want survivors for questioning. The first human volley was a demonstration of terrible physics. Kinetic weapons, simple tungsten rods weighing several tons each, were accelerated by magnetic rails to 90% of light speed. When they struck the Zirath ships, the impacts released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. The Zirath shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and standard missiles, were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The projectiles punched through shields, through armor, through the ships themselves. Vessels that had dominated space battles for decades died in seconds. Commander Zax watched his fleet die around him. 3 ships gone in the first volley, then 10, then 20. His communication systems filled with screams and damage reports. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Return fire. All ships engage. The Zirath weapons did hit their targets. Energy beams scored direct hits on human ships. But the humans had learned from their own brutal history. Their armor was layered, ablative, designed to disperse energy. Ships took damage, but they kept fighting. The human electronic warfare was even more devastating. Viruses and intrusion programs swarmed through Zirath systems. Weapons targeting computers malfunctioned. Navigation systems reported false data. Some ships found their own missiles turning around to target their launchers. The Zirath had never fought an enemy that had spent 2 centuries perfecting cyber warfare against itself. Earth's hackers had cut their teeth on the most sophisticated and paranoid systems humanity could build. The Zirath networks were complex but not designed to resist this level of attack. Tactical control is compromised, Zax's officer reported. The humans are in our systems. They're everywhere. Through the chaos, the human fleet moved with precise coordination. Each battle group operated independently, adapting to threats in real time. When the Zirath tried to concentrate fire on a damaged human ship, 2 others would move to shield it. When the Zirath attempted to break formation and scatter, the humans predicted the movement and cut off escape routes. It wasn't just superior numbers. It was superior tactics developed from thousands of years of humans fighting humans. Every strategy the Zirath tried had been used before in some war on Earth or Mars or the Belt. The humans knew the counters because they had invented most of these tactics themselves. 6 hours into the battle, the Zirath expeditionary fleet was destroyed. Of 500 ships, only 15 survived, crippled and drifting. The human fleet had lost 42 ships with another 70 damaged but operational. Commander Zax sat in his command chair on the ruined bridge of Righteous Purpose. Half his crew was dead. Life support was failing. He had been so confident that morning. A transmission came through on emergency frequencies. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, but her voice was firm. Commander Zax of the Zirath Collective, your fleet is destroyed. Your ships are disabled. I'm offering you terms. Surrender your vessels and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. You'll receive medical attention and be repatriated when hostilities end. You have 10 minutes to decide. Zax stared at the human admiral. You're offering mercy? After what we did to New Terra? I'm offering what you didn't give to 20,000 civilians. The chance to live. Your choice, Commander. Zax looked around his bridge, at the dead and dying, at the young crew members who had followed his orders. He thought about the reports of New Terra, the colony burning, the civilians who had died without warning or mercy. We surrender, he said quietly. The human fleet deployed rescue ships. Medical teams wearing pressure suits moved through the wreckage, pulling out survivors. Field hospitals were set up on the human carriers. Zirath wounded received the same care as human casualties. Some of the Zirath crew members wept, not from pain but from confusion. They had killed so many humans, and yet humans were saving them. Admiral Okonkwo watched the rescue operations from her command center. Commander Rodriguez stood beside her. The Galactic Council is demanding we cease hostilities, Rodriguez said. They're calling this an act of aggression. Okonkwo pulled up the communication system. She set it to broadcast on all frequencies. Open transmission that every species in the sector would receive. This is Admiral Catherine Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Fleet. To the Galactic Council. To the Zirath Collective, to anyone listening. You erased 20,000 of our people without warning or mercy. We came to you seeking justice. You gave us silence and called genocide a territorial dispute. Now you have our answer. We're not here for your territory. We're not here for conquest. We're here for accounting. The Zirath killed our people. We've defeated their fleet. This is just the beginning. She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. To the Zirath Collective specifically, you wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. Consider yourselves educated. Send your next fleet. We'll be waiting. The transmission ended. Across dozens of worlds and council chambers and military headquarters, alien leaders realized that they had badly miscalculated. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't suing for peace. They were advancing, and they had barely started fighting. In his cell aboard a human hospital ship, Commander Zax lay in bed recovering from his injuries. A human medic had just finished treating him. Before leaving, the medic had said something that Zax would remember for the rest of his life. We don't want to be monsters, but you made us show our teeth. Now you get to live with what you created. The defeat of the expeditionary fleet sent shockwaves through the Zirath Collective. In their capital world of Zirathion, the High Council met in emergency session. The chamber was filled with representatives from all 6 member species. Fear and anger mixed in equal measure. 500 ships destroyed in 6 hours. Council leader Vethrak spoke, his voice trembling. The humans have over 5,000 warships. Our intelligence was completely wrong. We cannot allow this to stand, spoke General Korzath of the military caste. If we show weakness now, the entire galactic order will collapse. Other species will see that the collective can be defeated. What do you propose? Asked Vethrak. Total mobilization. We strip our home defense fleets. We call in every favor from our allies. We assemble a force so large that even the humans cannot stand against it. 3,000 ships, maybe more. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for diplomacy. Others demanded revenge. But in the end, fear won. Fear of looking weak. Fear of losing their status. Fear of a young species that had just proven it could fight. The order went out across the collective. Every military shipyard began preparing for war. Allies were contacted, promises made. The Galactic Council, publicly neutral, quietly provided intelligence and logistical support. They feared humanity's aggression more than they feared the Zirath's cruelty. 3 months later, the greatest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the staging point. 3,000 warships from 8 different species. The Zirath provided the bulk of forces, but they were joined by the Kelvar, the Torthian Republic, and several smaller powers. It was an overwhelming show of force. General Korzath commanded from the super dreadnought Pride of Zirath. He studied the tactical plans with satisfaction. The humans would meet them at the Kethros Nexus, a system with multiple jump points, perfect for the collective strategy. The plan was elegant. They would appear to offer battle in the central system, drawing the human fleet in. Then forces hidden in the surrounding systems would jump in behind them, creating a kill box. The humans would be surrounded and destroyed. Superior numbers, superior positioning, and the experience of fighting together for centuries would overcome humanity's technological advantages. What General Korzath didn't understand was that humans had been fighting each other for millennia. Every trick, every strategy, every tactical deception had been tried in some human war. And more importantly, humans had learned to adapt faster than any species the collective had encountered. The human fleet arrived at Kethros Nexus exactly on schedule. 5,000 ships arranged in standard formation. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Unbroken and smiled slightly. Her intelligence officers had predicted this exact scenario. They think they're being clever, she said to Commander Rodriguez. Hidden forces in adjacent systems, classic pincer movement. Did they really think we wouldn't scout the surrounding areas? Should we avoid the trap, Admiral? No, we're going in. But on our terms. The battle began as the collective expected. The 2 fleets engaged in the central system, weapons fire lighting up the void. For the first hour it seemed like a standard engagement. Then the collective's hidden forces jumped in, appearing behind the human fleet. General Korzath felt a surge of triumph. They're trapped. All ships press the attack. But something unexpected happened. The human fleet didn't panic. It didn't try to retreat. Instead, it divided. Each human battle group broke away from the main formation, operating independently. They didn't fight as one massive fleet. They fought as dozens of smaller units, each with complete autonomy. When the collective forces tried to surround one group, two others would strike at vulnerable points. When they concentrated fire, the humans scattered and reformed elsewhere. It was chaos, but controlled chaos. Every human captain knew exactly what to do without waiting for orders. They adapted to threats in real time, covering each other, supporting damaged ships, exploiting every mistake the collective made. The collective forces, trained to follow centralized command, couldn't adapt fast enough. Their communication systems, designed for coordination between different species, became a weakness. Orders took too long to transmit and translate. By the time a directive reached a ship, the situation had changed. The human electronic warfare reached new heights of effectiveness. Viruses specifically designed for each alien species' systems spread through the collective fleet. Kelvar ships found their engines failing. Torthian vessels lost weapons targeting. Xyrath ships reported false sensor data that sent them firing at their own allies. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of continuous fighting where the void between stars became a hell of explosions, laser fire, and dying ships. The collective threw everything they had at the humans. Exotic weapons, suicide runs, even attempted ramming attacks. But humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare. They had fought with swords and spears. They had fought with muskets and cannons. They had fought with tanks and aircraft. They had fought with nuclear weapons in space. Every evolution of combat technology had been tested in human conflicts. The collective was facing the accumulated military knowledge of a species that had nearly destroyed itself dozens of times and always survived. When the battle ended, the numbers told the story. The collective had lost 2,400 ships. The human fleet had lost 800. The greatest military force ever assembled in the sector had been defeated by a species that had been in space for only 2 centuries. General Korzath sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display showing the scattered remnants of his fleet. Around him, his staff worked frantically to organize a retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. The humans controlled the jump points now. A transmission came through. Admiral Okonkwo appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was dirty, and there was a burn mark on her sleeve from a fire somewhere on her ship. But her eyes were steady. General Korzath, your fleet is defeated. I'm offering terms. Stand down your remaining vessels and we'll provide medical assistance. Your wounded will be treated. Your survivors will be cared for. You have my word. Korzath stared at her. Why? We would have killed every human in this system. Why offer mercy? Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. Because we're not monsters. We're not you. 20,000 of our people died on New Terra. We came here for justice, not genocide. Your people will live, General. They'll go home and tell the collective what happened here. They'll tell them what humans are capable of when you push us too far. She leaned forward slightly. We don't want to conquer your worlds. We don't want your territory. We just want you to understand that we're not prey. We're not weak, and we're done being victims. Korzath thought about the 3,000 ships he had commanded that morning, about the crews who would never see their homes again, about the certainty he had felt that the collective was invincible. We surrender, he said. Once again, human rescue ships moved through the wreckage. Medical teams worked alongside their own wounded to save collective survivors. Field hospitals treated aliens and humans side by side. Some of the alien wounded couldn't understand it. They had come to destroy humanity, and humanity was saving them. A young Xerath soldier, both legs shattered in an explosion, asked his human doctor a question. Why are you helping me? My people killed yours. The doctor, tired and covered in blood from hours of surgery, looked at him. Because killing you won't bring them back. Because somebody has to break the cycle. Because we're better than what you made us become. News of the battle spread across the galaxy in hours. The Galactic Council met in emergency session again. The representatives sat in stunned silence as the casualty reports came in. The collective, the dominant power for 300 years, had been crushed, and the human fleet, though damaged, was still operational. Still dangerous. Still advancing. The Galactic Council's message arrived 3 days after the Battle of Kethros Nexus. It was formal, carefully worded, and completely different in tone from their previous communications. They were requesting peace negotiations. Admiral Okonkwo read the message in her quarters aboard the Unbroken. The ship bore scars from the battle. Burn marks on the hull. Section still being repaired. But it remained operational, as did most of the human fleet. She had lost good people in the fighting. 800 ships meant thousands of crew members who would never see Earth again. Their sacrifice had to mean something. The Council wanted to meet on their neutral station. Okonkwo declined. Instead, she sent a simple response. If you want peace, come to Sol System. Come see what you've awakened. Then we'll talk. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council's diplomatic ship entered the Sol System. The delegates aboard included representatives from 12 species, including a very subdued Zirath counselor. What they saw made them understand why humanity had been so dangerous. The system wasn't just inhabited. It was armed. Every planet had orbital defense platforms. The asteroid belt bristled with automated weapons systems. Satellites with kinetic weapons orbited in the billions, and everywhere ships, not 5,000, not 10,000. New vessels rolled out of shipyards every day. The production showed no signs of slowing. A Kelvar diplomat whispered to his aide, they could build a fleet to conquer the entire sector. Why haven't they? The aide had no answer. The negotiations took place aboard the Unbroken and Sol system, under the shadow of Earth itself. The conference room was simple. A large table, chairs, and windows showing the blue-green world that had birthed humanity. Admiral Okonkwo entered with her staff. But she wasn't alone. The Secretary General of Earth, representatives from Mars, the Belt Colonies, and the outer settlements all attended. This wasn't just about the military. This was about humanity's future in the galaxy. The Galactic Council's lead diplomat, a Torthian named Velkris, stood to speak. He was old, experienced, and had negotiated treaties for 60 years. But even he seemed nervous. Admiral Okonkwo honored representatives of humanity. The Council wishes to extend our apologies for the tragedy of New Terra. We recognize that our initial response was insufficient. We hope to establish a peace that benefits all species. Okonkwo listened without expression. When he finished, she stood. New Terra had 20,000 people. Farmers, teachers, children, scientists. They died in 6 hours. The Zirath burned them without warning. We came to you for justice. You called it a territorial dispute. You told us to accept our place. She placed a datapad on the table. These are our terms, non-negotiable. The delegates looked at each other nervously. Velkris picked up the datapad and began reading. His eyes widened. These terms are extensive. They're fair, Okonkwo said coldly. Read them. All of them. The terms were indeed extensive. Full reparations for New Terra, not in currency but in territory. The colony world would be rebuilt by the collective at their expense. A buffer zone of 3 systems under human control. The Zirath would pay for it all. Council reformation. Humanity demanded a seat with full voting rights and veto power over any military actions. No more would young species be erased because they inconvenienced the established powers. Non-aggression pacts with real enforcement mechanisms. Any species that attacked human civilians would face the full weight of the Terran defense fleet. The galaxy would learn that human lives had value, technology exchange on voluntary and mutual terms. The Council's monopoly on advanced technologies would end. Humanity would share what they had learned, and others would do the same. Knowledge would no longer be a tool of control. Velkris read through all of it, his expression growing more strained. Finally, he looked up. These terms would fundamentally change the galactic order. The Council has maintained stability for 1,000 years. Your stability was built on intimidation, said the Secretary General. On the threat of what happened to New Terra happening to anyone who challenged you. That ends now. And if we refuse? Everyone in the room looked at Admiral Okonkwo. She walked to the window and gestured outside at the fleet. At the tens of thousands of ships, at the orbital weapons platforms, at the industrial capacity that could build more, always more. Then we continue what we started. We take what we're owed. We reshape this sector by force. And we don't stop until every species understands that humanity is not prey. The silence in the room was profound. Finally, the Zirath counselor spoke. His name was Thex, and he had been a junior officer during New Terra's destruction. He had been promoted to the Council as part of their rebuilding. You could destroy us all, he said quietly. You have the ships, the weapons, the will. Why don't you? Okonkwo turned from the window. For the first time, her expression softened slightly. Because 20,000 dead is already too many. Because we didn't come to space to conquer. We came to grow, to explore, to find our place among the stars. You taught us we needed fangs. We've grown them. But we haven't forgotten that we once dreamed of something better. She returned to the table. We can build a better galaxy. One where species don't get erased for inconveniencing their neighbors. One where justice means something. One where young civilizations aren't crushed by old ones. Or we can continue this war until one of us is gone. What guarantees do we have that humanity won't use this power to dominate others? Asked Velcris. The same guarantee we had that the collective wouldn't kill our civilians, Okonkwo said. None. You'll have to trust that we mean what we say, just like we had to trust you. We see how that worked out. She leaned forward. But here's the difference. We're offering you a choice. We're offering mercy we didn't receive. We're offering to build something better. Take it or don't. But decide now. The deliberations lasted 3 days. The council delegates argued among themselves. Some wanted to continue fighting. Others saw the futility. The human fleet wasn't going anywhere. And every day more ships joined them. Finally, Velcris returned to the conference room. He looked like he had aged years and days. The council accepts your terms. All of them. The treaty was signed aboard the Unbroken with representatives from 30 species watching. It was broadcast across the galaxy. The Galactic Accords, they called it. A new charter that guaranteed rights for all species, protected civilians, and gave even the youngest civilizations a voice in galactic affairs. The Zerath Collective paid for every bit of New Terra's reconstruction. Human engineers and alien workers rebuilt the colony together. Where buildings had stood, new buildings rose. Where fields had burned, new crops grew. In the center of the new capital, a memorial was erected. 20,000 names carved into black stone. Each name represented a life, a dream, a future that had been stolen. Below the names, a single phrase, never again, never forgotten. Admiral Okonkwo attended the dedication ceremony. She was older now, gray, and her hair turned to white. The war had aged her, but she stood straight as the names were read aloud, all 20,000 of them. It took 3 days to read them all. A young girl approached her after the ceremony. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Admiral Okonkwo, my name is Maria Chin. My grandmother was Sarah Chin. She died here before. Okonkwo knelt down to the girl's level. I knew about your grandmother. She was a farmer. She grew wheat. My mother says you saved us, that you made sure this never happens again. Okonkwo looked at the memorial, at the names stretching across the black stone. I didn't save your grandmother. I was too late for her. But maybe I helped make sure other grandmothers don't die like she did. The girl thought about this, then hugged the admiral. Okonkwo, the woman who had commanded the largest fleet in human history, who had defeated the collective and reshaped galactic civilization, hugged her back and cried. Above New Terra, the Terran defense fleet maintained its vigil. The ships were still there, still armed, still ready, but now they watched over a galaxy that was learning a new lesson, not about humanity's capacity for war, but about their capacity for mercy. On Earth, children learned about New Terra in school, about the 20,000 who died, about the war that followed, about the peace that was built from the ashes. They learned that humanity could be terrible when provoked, but chose to be better when given the chance. In the collective's capital, former General Korzath taught at the military academy. He was old now, his fighting days long behind him. His students asked him about the war, about the battles he had lost. What did you learn? A young cadet asked. Korzath thought for a long moment. I learned that humans are dangerous not because they have powerful weapons or large fleets. They're dangerous because they can lose everything, suffer terribly, gain the power to destroy their enemies completely, and then choose mercy instead. That kind of strength is more terrifying than any weapon. He looked at his students. If you remember nothing else from my teaching, remember this. Never mistake human kindness for weakness. They're kind because they choose to be, not because they have to be, and that makes all the difference. Across the galaxy, the New Order held. There were disputes, arguments, disagreements, but there was also dialogue. Justice. The recognition that every species, no matter how young or small, had the right to exist. And above it all, the human fleet watched, silent guardians of a peace they had fought for. They had shown the galaxy their fangs. Now they showed the galaxy their heart. The girl who had hugged Admiral Okonkwo grew up on New Terra. She became a pilot like so many young people inspired by the fleet that had avenged their world. She visited the memorial every year, reading her grandmother's name, remembering a woman she had never known. 1 year, decades later, she brought her own daughter. As they stood before the black stone, the little girl asked, "Did great-great-grandmother die for nothing?" The pilot looked at the thriving colony around them, at the mixed species population living in peace, at the ships overhead still watching, still protecting. "No, sweetheart. She died so we could learn to be better, so everyone could learn to be better. And we have." Above them, a new ship joined the fleet, its name painted on the hull in letters that gleamed in the sunlight. Sarah Chen. A small vessel, nothing like the mighty dreadnoughts. But it bore the name proudly, a reminder that every life matters, that every death teaches, that humanity remembers.